expect that he would be today. With us at the anchor desk, Rob Marr, and he has a live report on that, Rob.
Well, 23-year-old Keith Nolan and his brother have been charged with attempted murder resulting from an attack on two Clinton Township businessmen, Joseph and Sebastian Blondo. And Michael, the brother, was acquitted, but Keith was convicted and went to court expecting a very stiff sentence. But the prosecution appeared at the last moment with new evidence, naming another suspect. The judge quickly freed him. Everyone told him they were sorry in his home in Sterling Heights. Keith's mother, Sylvia Knoll, tells WWJ the range of emotion.
Before it happened, I went to court believing, knowing that the boy was innocent. And then when the jury found him guilty, I just went into shock. How did I feel when he was acquitted? I just couldn't believe it. I just totally broke down and cried.
Yesterday, by the way, was Keith Knoll's 23rd birthday. He says the best birthday present he's ever received. And the reason that Keith Knoll, sort of shades of Perry Mason, Joe, got his second chance was that a Clinton Township police scientist devised a new way to remove ink from a duffel bag. The removal of the ink revealed the new suspect's name. Rob Marr, WWJ News Radio 95.
The two-year nightmare of a 23-year-old Sterling Heights man is finally over. Up until this week, Keith Knoll expected to spend a good part of his life behind bars for a crime that he did not commit. But as Channel 7's Kathy Walsh now reports, today Keith Knoll is once again dreaming of a bright and free future.
This house in Sterling Heights, it's the home of the Knoll family. But for the past year, it's housed a family full of pain and anguish. The agony has been over Keith Knoll. Keith turned 23 this week, but he and his family spent his entire 22nd year trying to prove his innocence. It all began in February of 1981. Keith was arrested and charged with the attempted murder of two Clinton Township businessmen.
I was shocked because I wasn't there, you know. It's like a ton of bricks coming down on you.
And from then on, the weight of the situation never let up. Keith went to trial. Despite he and his parents' claims that he was home the night of the attack, he was convicted. His family was torn apart. His mother went into shock and was hospitalized.
It's like a nightmare. Total nightmare. Because you know he's innocent. And you go up to that stand and you tell him he was home. We know he was home. And they just didn't believe us. Just a total nightmare for the whole family.
Keith faced sentencing this Friday. He was expected to be given 7 years in prison. But Tuesday, Keith, the convicted felon, became Keith, the free man. It seems a woman came forward with information that implicated someone else. The police did some digging, and Keith's conviction was set aside. Are you bitter?
A little. But not much, you know. I'm out of it, so I really can't be that bitter. But if I would have had to do time, then I would have been bitter. I was just going to try and put it out of my mind.
Now that it's over, I thank God. And I hope this never, ever happens to another boy. Anybody. Ever.
Kathy Walsh, Channel 7 Action News reporting.
Of attempted murder. He was facing possibly life in prison. Now he's free. We'll explain why he's free in just a few minutes. After news with Mike O'Neill. 11, and now Eli Zaret's Sports Z News Talk time is 6:14. This is David Newman on Evening News Talk. Our guest in the segment, kind of an unaccustomed slot for him. He's one of this day's newsmakers. That's probably the first time in his life he can make that claim. His name is Keith Knoll. He's from Sterling Heights. He's 23 years old. Earlier this week, he expected to spend at least the foreseeable future, perhaps all the rest of his life, in prison. He was convicted of attempted murder, but today he's a free man, and thereby hangs a tale that Keith intends to share with us. Welcome, Keith, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Glad to have you on. Now, tell us the whole thing. Tell us the whole thing from the beginning. How you came to be accused of attempted murder, and what happened to you after that.
Well, I got accused because I got in a fight with one of the owners earlier in 1980.
Tell us who the owners are. You got to assume that most of the people listening don't know who's who, so go back to the beginning. You got in a fight with one man. Who was that man?
That was Sebastian Biondo.
Why'd you get into a fight with him?
Well, he pushed me from behind as I was leaving his bar.
You were just a customer in the bar?
Yes.
He was the owner of the bar?
Yes.
You were just a regular individual there, and you had gone to it, how often would you say?
Maybe once before that.
Why did he push you?
He said I was drinking, and I told him I was drinking all night since 9 o'clock. I was underage at the time. And the waitress just came up to me and asked me what I wanted to drink, so I just naturally said, well, give me a beer.
You were underage in 19 when?
80.
Okay, it says you're 23 now. How can that be?
I just turned 23.
Okay, so you were 20 at the time.
Right.
Okay. So he pushed you from behind and said you were drinking underage?
Yeah. He said I've been drinking, and I told him, well, I've been drinking all night since 9 o'clock.
Right.
And he says, well, you're underage, you have to leave. So I finished what beer I had left, and then I started out the door, and then I got pushed twice from behind by him. And then I turned around and I hit him with my fist. And then I started out the door again, and a bowler stopped me from going.
Who did?
A bowler that was bowling there.
Okay.
It's a bar bowling alley thing.
Right, right.
And then I went back to their office, and then I got arrested for that. But I was proven innocent on that case.
You were accused of assault on Sebastian Biondo back in 1980 when you were 20 years old.
Right.
And you were acquitted of whatever. You were not charged. What happened? What was the disposition?
It was dismissed.
Okay. And then what after that?
Well, before it was dismissed, before I was supposed to go to court on this, Sebastian Biondo and Joe Biondo,
His brother?
His brother, yeah. Both of them got beat up really bad. There's, no doubt in my mind that they did get beat up. And I kind of thought they was me.
Where was this bar, by the way?
Hall Road in Garfield.
Okay, and what town?
Clinton Township.
Clinton Township, okay. They got beat up, and that was the basis of the charge of attempted murder.
Right.
Okay. And what happened after that?
Well, I got arrested for it and convicted.
What were the circumstances of that beating? Obviously, you didn't do it. We'll explain how that was revealed, but how does a beating turn out to be attempted murder?
Well, they were left to die, I believe, by whoever did it.
They were then beaten that badly?
Yes.
What kind of shape are they in now?
Last I seen them, they were in good shape.
Back up a little bit. I don't understand why a bartender or a bar owner would shove even an underage customer. And there must be some animosity that existed beforehand.
Nothing that I knew of,
Says, hey, you've been drinking underage.
Right.
And he pushes you without any prior problems between you?
He might have got upset when I finished my beer. That might have ticked him off a little bit.
He said, get out of here, you're underage or something like that?
Right, you'll have to leave now because you're drinking. That's what he told me.
You insisted on finishing your beer?
Well, I didn't insist. I just picked it up and drank it, yeah.
Okay. And he didn't like that, so he shoved you?
Yeah. As I was leaving, he shoved me from behind. As I was leaving the bowling alley.
Like you were being bounced out of the place, or worse than that?
Bounced out, just a shove. It was a good shove to knock me off balance.
That was back in when, 1980? What time?
Right, 1980.
When in 1980? What month?
I think it was February.
Okay, that's just about 3 years ago.
Right.
Now, when was the beating on the Biondo brothers that you were accused of?
That was in 81, in February the 5th, they got beat up.
About 2 years ago.
Right.
And how did you know that you were a suspect in it?
The police got a hold of me and asked me if I'd come down for an interview.
Okay.
And I went down and took the interview, and then they let me go. And about a week later or so, they came and arrested me. I went down there again, and then they arrested me.
Tell us what happened in that first interview when they wanted to talk to you only. What did they say to you?
They basically wanted to know where I was that night, and who I was with. If I did do this.
Right. What'd you tell them?
I told them, no, I didn't do it. I was at home that night. I came home right after work and stayed home all night.
Who was home with you?
My mom was there for a while. My buddy Brian Land was there, and Pat Schoner was there in the house.
So you had 3 alibi witnesses.
Right.
What did the cops say about your alibi witnesses?
They didn't say really too much about it. They waited to interview them at the courtroom.
Okay, this was all in the first interview when you cited the fact that 3 people saw you at home that night. They didn't say anything about it. They said, okay, now you can go.
Right.
Okay, and then you were arrested. How much later?
Maybe a week to 2 weeks later.
What did they tell you then?
They said that you're being under arrest. You're getting arrested for an assault with intent to commit murder.
And what did they tell you the evidence against you was?
They didn't say no evidence to me.
Well, we'll get to the evidence in just a moment. Meantime, here are the numbers. There must have been some evidence. We'll find out what came up in the trial. From Southfield, Berkeley, or Beverly Hills, 353-TALK. Livonia and Canton, 425-TALK. Detroit and Dearborn, 873-TALK. Our guest is a man who is the beneficiary of the proper functioning of justice. He was accused and convicted of attempted murder, but now he's free because evidence was developed after his conviction when he was about to go to prison that he was not the man. And we'll talk more with Keith Noll in just a moment.
Laugh it up this Saturday night and Sunday morning with the greatest collection of comedy from the Comedy Store on News Talk Radio, AM 1270, WXYZ.
I wish Bertha and I could be that chummy.
Well, maybe you and your wife could do more things together, share the same interests.
We used to dig in the garden together, but I got worried and made her stop.
Why, Mr. Postman?
She dug a hole just about my size.
It's 2 hours of comedy. This Laugh it up with the world's greatest comedians on the Comedy Store from your friends at News Talk Radio, AM 1270, WXYZ, Detroit. The Bell System presents Lionel Richie and the Commodores for Long Distance.
Touching you time after time.
Time is 6:23. This is David Newman, and now this program reminder. Wake up to a Mike Miller Friday morning when you'll get tips on how to deprogram a daughter who is suffering from terminal valley speech or valley girl speech. We'll also talk with the author of Every Mother's Son and talk about the Broadway smash same time next year with the star of it, Jan Salisbury. So don't miss out on a Mike Miller Friday morning with Jerry Whitman right here on News Talk Radio, AM 1270, WXYZ Detroit. WXYZ News Talk time is 6:23. We continue with Keith Noll of Sterling Heights. He got into a hassle about 3 years ago in a Clinton Township bar with the owner of the bar, who shoved him, he says, from behind. He became a suspect a year or so later in the attempted murder of that man and his brother. He was convicted of it. He faced a life in prison, a lifetime in prison. But evidence was developed after his conviction, which is to the credit of the prosecutor's office and the lawmen involved. It got him off the hook and made another man the principal suspect. Now, I have to get back to the business of why you were a suspect, Keith. Now, most people, in hearing what you've said so far, are figuring there must be something more to it. The guy doesn't become a suspect in an attempted murder just because he had a hassle in a bar. There's got to be more to it than that.
Well, they told the police that I threatened them in the office when in the first incident. They said that I threatened their life.
When you were arrested for assault or whatever it was?
It was aggravated assault.
Aggravated assault. You were in the office being held by who?
By Augustine Biondo and Sebastian Biondo.
Okay. They held you until the cops came.
Right.
They accused you. How can they accuse you? I don't understand that. Because you responded to the shove with a sock?
Right.
That constitutes an assault.
Right. Well, they said that I kicked them in the face.
Did you?
No.
Okay. Sounds like you won anyway.
Right. I was acquitted. It was proven innocent on that case.
Okay. But the evidence for the cops that was sufficient to have you arrested was the allegation that you threatened one of their lives or both of their lives.
One of them. They said.
Were there any witnesses?
They said no, but my brother and Mike and sister-in-law were in there, in the office with me, and they said that they weren't in the office when I said it.
Okay.
They said it was just.
So it's the unsupported word of the Biondos from the prior case that made you the principal suspect.
Right.
Any other evidence that was sufficient in the eyes of the police to have you arrested for attempted murder?
There was no physical evidence brought into court. It was just their word and my word.
Okay. Well, we're at the stage of you being arrested. What happened after that? You're arrested, you're told you're charged with attempted murder, then what?
Well, I got out on a bond.
This is 2 years ago.
Right.
Just about exactly 2 years ago.
Right.
Okay.
I got out on a bond, and then...
How much bond?
It was a $10,000 personal bond.
Which means, what, $1,000 cash up front?
No, that's just on me. You know, if I was to leave, I wouldn't be able to. If I came back, I'd have to pay the county $10,000.
But you didn't have to put up cash?
No.
Okay. You're out on bond, then what?
And then it came to court.
You hired a lawyer, I presume?
Right. And he was Thomas McMahon.
Okay, and then it came to court.
Right.
What happened in court?
They brought in 2 pipes. I don't know if they were supposed to be the evidence that I did it. And we went through the court procedures.
Was it a jury trial?
Right, there was 12 juries.
And what happened? Give me a summary of the trial. What convinced the jury? They brought in 2 pipes, and how did they link those pipes to you?
I don't know how they linked them to me, but I guess the jury just
Try to recall what the prosecutor said. The prosecutor must have said something about those pipes and your behavior, what had gone down before, that at least was sufficient to convince the jury. What I'm trying to do, just so you understand my mission, I'm trying to figure out how a guy like you who's innocent still gets convicted. What convinced that jury that you were the guy? So far, you haven't told me a thing. If I was a juror, that would tell me that you're the man that ought to go to jail.
I didn't see any evidence myself. That's why I couldn't understand how
I
they
don't get it.
convinced. I don't understand it either.
What did your lawyer say afterward? You must have had conversations with your lawyer.
He said he was sorry. He was just confused about the case as everybody else is.
Did he do an effective job of representation for you?
I think he did, yes.
Okay, what did he say in open court during the trial to the jury to convince them you weren't the man? What did he say to them? What was the essence of his argument?
That I was at home that night.
Right.
I had my alibis there.
The witnesses took the stand.
Right.
Your mother and your friends.
Right. My dad.
Okay.
He took the stand. And we just told our side of the story to the jury. Where I was that night.
Who were the witnesses for the prosecution? What was, I still don't understand, what was so convincing to this jury? How long did they deliberate, by the way?
For about 6 hours.
That's a medium amount of time, not a whole whale of a lot of time. If there really was a substantial doubt, it would have gone on probably for longer than 6 hours. I'm assuming that. I don't know.
Well, I don't know either. That was the first time I was in that big of a court, so I don't know how long it would take.
Yeah, okay. But what was the core of the case? The prosecution. What witnesses did they supply?
They just supplied police officers and Joseph Biondo and Augustine Biondo.
Who were then somewhat recovered enough to testify. Okay.
Right.
We'll hear more of the case against Keith Knoll. Turned out it was a false case. Turned out he was falsely convicted. And we'll find out what Keith is going to do about this conviction, if anything, like a lawsuit or something like that, false arrest and all the rest, in just a very few minutes. WXYZ News Talk time is 6:32. This is David Newman on Evening News Talk. We continue with our conversation with Keith Knoll, the central figure in a story which appears on the front page of today's Detroit Free Press. Earlier this week, he expected to spend the foreseeable future in prison. Instead, today he's a free man, thereby hangs the tale he is sharing with us now. He was convicted, but after his conviction, evidence appeared that he was not the man. WXYZ, you're on with David Newman and Keith Knoll. Hello.
Good evening, David. This is Josie from Mount Clemens.
Hi, Josie.
I just wanted to call to say that I, too, had gone through a situation where my son was home in bed, sleeping, and I knew that for a fact because I had been ill for a month with an injury, and I was unable to sleep through the whole night.
Right.
And he, too, was accused by the police, arrested, and brought to trial. And
what was the disposition, Josie?
well, I can't even tell you what it is because we're in the process now of perhaps getting a lawsuit.
Oh, okay.
I really don't want to say it.
Okay.
But I just want to say to this boy, I give him a lot of credit. I know what he is. I know part of the feeling that he has gone through because when you know you're innocent and they take and they twist and turn everything around to make you look guilty, and you feel helpless because you can't prove you're innocent. It's the worst feeling in the whole wide world.
I bet it is.
I was fortunate that my son did not go to prison for something that he did not do, but just to realize that he was innocent and you couldn't prove it because you're the mother. they don't take a mother's word or father's word. They think you lie for your children.
I'm sure they do.
Our hands were completely tied. We were law-abiding citizens, never had any trouble with the police, other than a traffic ticket maybe. You know, that's about the extent of it. Went down to the police station to try to clear ourselves, had his picture taken, and he was involved in something that he didn't have anything at all what to do. And I went through 4 months of hell, and I almost had a nervous breakdown. He had to drop out of school, and all of his grades had dropped down, because the thing of it was is to know that you're guilty. I mean, to know that you're innocent and be treated like you're guilty and have your hands tied, that you can't do anything, and you got to listen to what the law says, but yet you feel like you're a criminal because you are guilty in their eyes until you can prove you're innocent. But there were so many things that were cocky in this story that it was unreal. Well, we've got a lawsuit now, possibly, and we're going to if we do have a lawsuit where we can take and maybe get our rights straightened out, I will call you someday and tell you what it was all about.
Story. Yeah, I'm dying to know.
Yeah, the young man that was involved in this did this repeatedly, 13 or 14 times, and his sentence was, see a psychiatrist for a year and you're scot-free. And my boy that never was in any trouble, they said, well, we can put you in jail just like that, mister.
Josie, I'm dying, as I say, to know more, and someday you'll tell me.
Yeah, I really feel for this boy, and I've gotten very hard-hearted because it's also sad when you're a law-abiding citizen and you can't have any rights to straighten it out because the police sometimes have a one-way vision. They see what they want to see and they don't see any further.
Thanks, Josie.
Thank you.
Appreciate your call. I'm sure Keith appreciates your support. We're talking with Keith Knoll, convicted of attempted murder, but after the conviction, evidence appeared to indicate he was not, in fact, the man, and now he's free. He was facing a lifetime in prison. One thing strikes me about the sentence you faced, that it sounds as if the newspaper report is accurate, the sentence is approximately the same if you succeed or not in killing somebody.
I don't know that. I know
that was your understanding. You were facing a life sentence for attempted murder, which is the same.
Right.
Perhaps there's a possibility of parole that's not there for first-degree murder fact. But on paper, going into it, the sentence is the same whether you'd kill them or not.
Right, it probably would be, yeah. I think it would.
Okay, now tell us about your brother. Your brother was also accused, but he was acquitted. How did that work?
Well, it's all in the jury. I don't know what the jury was thinking when they went out. But from what the paper said, he got acquitted because of he's a parent. He has a family to take care of. That's what the paper says.
What paper?
I'm not sure. I think it was Macomb Daily.
Well, but either there's evidence against both of you, or there isn't. I mean, that's no basis on which to decide one man walks, the other man goes to jail.
There was no evidence all throughout the trial, just pictures and the pipes that they used.
Tell me a little bit more, if you can, about the prosecution's case. Lawmen got up, and the Biondos got up, and I guess evidence technicians got up, and they showed these pipes. How are the pipes related to you? How did they pin those pipes on you?
I don't know how they pinned them on me, but they were at the scene. That's what they picked up when they arrived at the scene.
Get up. I'm trying to envision what went on in the trial. An evidence technician or a policeman gets up and says these pipes were used in the assault on the Biondo brothers, right?
Right.
What does that tell me? It doesn't tell me. If I'm a juror, it doesn't tell me a thing. Of course, pipes were used. Doesn't mean that you used them, right?
Right. I don't know
so
how they came with that.
Well, something else must have happened. There must have been a showing in the court that somehow those pipes were traceable to you in some way.
There were no fingerprints taken off the pipes or nothing like that. So I couldn't really tell you how they linked it. I don't see how the jury did it myself.
These were the weapons used.
Right.
And the jury says, okay, those are the weapons used. What's it got to do with the guy who's sitting in the courtroom? Answer? You don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. WXYZ News Talk time is 6:38, and we'll take some calls for our guest, Keith Knoll, in just a moment.
The Spartans are marching off on this.
Possibly a life sentence in prison as the result of his attempted murder conviction. Now he's free because evidence appeared to the credit of the lawman on the case that indicated he was not the man. We're finding out more about that case. It's on the front page of today's paper. WXYZ are on with David Emmett. Hello.
Hello?
Hi.
This is Valerie from Oak Park.
Hi, Valerie.
Can't hear you too well, so I don't know what's wrong with the phone. But anyway, I wanted to talk to this young fella, and I wanted to say first that this is a good news story. This is a wonderful news story, you know.
That's right.
That the news should publicize, like President Reagan said. Put
Right.
it in all the newspapers and on TV and everything. Anyway, the thing is, you said you can't see how he could be accused by the pipes and stuff like that, and yet, you know, they really didn't have any evidence. Well, you know that you could be railroaded into
Of course I know you can be railroaded, but there at least must be a surface showing of connection of the weapon. At least that was my belief.
Well,
it wasn't there, obviously.
that this young man is, you know, pretty young.
Why introduce the pipes if you can't link them to the suspect, to the accused man?
Need the transcript, I guess,
Yeah,
first.
exactly.
Could we ask who his attorney was?
Yeah, he's already, I think, been mentioned. Why don't you mention him now? And in fact, he's waiting on the line to talk with us.
Oh,
His name is McMahon, and he's the next caller scheduled.
what's his name?
McMahon.
McMahon. Oh,
Right.
McMahon?
H-O-N is the way it's usually spelled, but I don't
Now, I
know.
was going to say, now, look, how can he get a sentence even, I mean, if he was guilty of what is it, 100 years in jail or life in prison?
Life.
Life. For a crime, these fellas weren't killed, right?
That's true. They recovered.
Yeah, what about these, this fellow that killed those 3 people and started that fire downtown, you know? He only got 45 years, right? For actually killing, I think, 3 people, right?
No, he got life.
It doesn't make sense, does it?
He got life. But I don't understand the...
I think he got 45 years.
I think you're wrong.
Oh,
But anyway, I appreciate your call.
all right,
Thanks so much. Now we'll talk with Keith Knowles' lawyer, Thomas McMahon, in practice in Utica?
Right.
Okay. Mr. McMahon, welcome.
Yes, hello.
Glad to have you on. Tell us more about what, in your view, convicted your client. What did the jury believe?
Well,
What was the evidence?
There was a very interesting conflict, I guess. Your name is David?
That's it.
David? There were 2 brothers, Keith and his brother Michael. They were both charged with the same thing at the same time in the same place by 2 other brothers. The jury was told by each of the victims that they had close-up eye contact, you know, they were eyeball witnesses, as we say, of the 2 assailants. And the jury chose to believe the person who, I think it was Joseph Biondo, who testified that Keith had beaten him, and they chose not to believe Sebastian Biondo, who testified that Keith's brother Michael had beaten him.
Very strange.
It was all in the same place, approximately maybe 40 or 50 feet apart. One was Joseph Biondo said that he was beaten by Keith inside the vestibule in a brilliantly lit area. And Sebastian Biondo said that he was beaten by his brother Michael in the parking lot, 60 or 80 or 100 feet away, something, in a brilliantly lit parking lot.
All right, so that's the
They
call.
both said that they had no question whatsoever that the person whom they identified as their assailant were my clients.
So that's the core of the case.
That's the only part of the case.
Against
No
Michael
evidence.
and Keith Knoll. There was no showing of any of the evidence introduced that could be linked in any kind of concrete way to either of the defendants.
That's correct.
But
There was, the allegation was that the wounds were inflicted by pipes or blunt instruments. There were 2 pipes which were brought to court, one of which was introduced and accepted as evidence. The other one was never mentioned again.
in no sense were those weapons shown to be from your clients.
No way.
Okay.
No, as a matter of fact, I asked the officer in charge of the case if any kind of tests of any kind had been made on any of the evidence which the police reports